Welcome to the International Desk. I'm Lynda Kinkade at the CNN Centre. Our top story now, the escalating migrant crisis in Europe. We begin our coverage with the latest developments. Thousands of migrants have given up on the idea of leaving Hungary by train. They've left the main train station in Budapest and are trying to make it to Austria on foot. We have a CNN crew there on the ground with them right now. Hundreds of other migrants faced off with Hungarian police for a second day on a train stopped at a station just outside Budapest. The CNN team there says it looks like police are sealing the train. And they said the Hungarian railway moved in a second train, apparently to block their view of what was happening. You can see that train pull into view as our reporter Fred Plackton was on air. On the political side of things, British Prime Minister David Cameron says given the scale of the crisis and the suffering of the people, the UK will now take in thousands more of the Syrian refugees. Now to that dramatic scene in Hungary's capital, Budapest, where hundreds of migrants decided not to wait at the train station to see what would happen to them there. Now we've got Arwa Damon, who's been walking through on the streets of Budapest from the train station with these refugees. It seems to be thinning out there now, Arwa. What is the plan? How far do they hope, where do they hope to get?
Well, they all really want to get to Germany, and if they have to walk the entire way, then so be it. That is what they all say they are going to do with the children, with the elderly, with those that are having to be pushed in wheelchairs, with the little kids that are being carried on their parents' shoulders. No matter what it takes, they say, they refuse to leave their fate in the hands of politicians, they say, who clearly do not have their best interests at heart and who they believe have no compassion or empathy with everything that they have been going through, because they say if they did, they would not have been left in those miserable conditions that they were languishing in at the train station in Budapest. They would not have been ordered into the Hungarian camp, something that they don't want to do because they've already been through a camp, most of them, and they say that the treatment there is absolutely inhumane. Along the way, as you can see, people, they do stop, they do rest, they all move as a group. They believe that if they manage to stay in these numbers in a big cohesive group, the police is not going to be able to deter them. They will not be able to forcibly round them up. They will not be able to prevent them from, at the very least, reach their initial goal, and that is the Hungarian-Austrian border. What they're also hoping for is that some of these politicians, these European leaders, will see what it is that they're going through, will see that these are the actions of desperate people. Parents don't want to make their children trek this far, especially after the long and arduous journey that they've already been through, but they're hoping that some of these European leaders will see this and understand that they couldn't take it anymore. They couldn't take the conditions that they were having to live in anymore. They couldn't take this life in limbo, and so they've decided to just pack up and go.
And Arwa, you spent some 14 hours or so on a train with many of these refugees yesterday. They were unwilling to get off, worried that they would be sent to a refugee camp. Just explain the conditions at the camp, what they were worried about.
Well, a lot of them have already been through this camp that is on the Hungarian-Serbian border, and everyone who was there will say unanimously that they never in their wildest imaginations could have ever thought that they would be treated like that in a European country, in a nation that was meant to be the gateway to Europe. Many of them, as they crossed from Serbia into Hungary, their first experience with the Hungarian authorities was having to beg them for water and be left sitting in a field underneath the beating sun. Then they were taken to this camp that is something of a transit center, or at least that is what it's called. And there they say they were meant to feel as if they weren't even human. They say that they were treated like animals, that bottles of water would just be chucked at them and they would have to scramble for them. They say that they were herded around like sheep. People are so traumatized by what they went through there that they say that they would rather walk or, yes, spend 14 plus hours, because they are still on that train, than go into these camps. They cannot bear the thought of having to live in those conditions again. whenever you talk about the camps to someone, they'll just say, please, just do something, do whatever it is that you can, but make sure that we do not go back there because we can't take it. These people are exhausted. They are emotionally drained. They're physically exhausted. Their nerves are frayed. They can't take the thought of going into a Hungarian camp. We do know that the UNHCR has offered to help. So far, the Hungarian government has said that it does not need help. We asked some of these people if they would be more willing to go into the camps if they were run by the UN. They said yes, that would make them feel more comfortable. Whenever they hear the Hungarian authorities trying to urge them to go into the camps, you immediately hear chants of no camp, liar, liar, liar. They don't trust the Hungarian government after everything that they've been through. But that being said, you do see some people here drinking water. They have water bottles, and that is because along the way, people that have been watching what these refugees are going through, they have said, we are going to do what we can to help. And a lot of those who are coming out handing out water also, they've been saying that they're ashamed of the way that their government has been treating these people that are so vulnerable and so desperate.
So desperate, fed up, tired, hungry, and now they have hundreds of kilometres ahead of them to try and get to the Austrian border. Arwa Damon, thank you very much for that update. We will come back to you shortly. Let's go now to senior international correspondent Frederick Pleitgen, who joins us from Bicske, Hungary. And Fred, the standoff there continues with refugees still on a train. What can you tell us?
Well, certainly, and the standoff really has escalated over the past hour and a half or so. What happened was we were actually live on the air when all of a sudden the Hungarian railway put a train between us and the train that had the migrants on it, because we were communicating with them quite a lot beforehand. They were telling us about their grievances. They were telling us about what they want, that they want to go to Germany, that they want supplies, but not from the Hungarian government. And they were saying that they refused to move into any sort of shelter, the same thing that the people apparently told Arwa as well. Then all of a sudden a train pulled up to block our view, and then what happened was that hundreds of riot police then moved in to the train. And if we look right now, we can see that the riot police is still standing in front of that train. They've basically made all the migrants who are on that train go back into that train, which in and itself is already a pretty tough thing to do, because it is very, very warm today, and obviously those people have been inside that train for well over 24 hours now. I would say closer to 30 hours at this point. And again, they were telling us how dire the conditions are aboard that train. There was one refugee who spoke directly to me and said that the conditions were very, very tough. Let's listen into that.
Right now, the situation is so bad inside. We have a babies, we have a women, we have a pregnant women inside. So many women, they are pregnant inside. No food, no water, no milk, nothing inside. And I don't know why they stop us here. We buy the ticket by our money. They don't help us to move from the station. If they want to stop us here, why they allowed us to buy the ticket? Why? I don't understand this.
So as you can see, there's some very, very tough conditions for these people, especially for the children. We were seeing the children who were on that train sort of walking around, seeming fairly traumatized there on the platform. It's very hot here during the day. It's very, very cold during the night, so it is very tough for them. And again, they don't have very much in the way of supplies, but just that whole waiting game is definitely also taking its toll on all of these people. And of course, many of them have pretty much spent all the money that they have to try and get a train ticket. They all have train.
Just lost that link there to Frederick Pleitgen. We will go back to him shortly, but now to the diplomatic response. British Prime Minister David Cameron is relaxing his hardline stance on the migrant crisis after an outcry from lawmakers and the public. He's dedicated an additional $150 million to confront the humanitarian situation triggered by the Syrian civil war. And the Prime Minister is taking other steps too. Senior international correspondent Nick Robertson joins us now live from outside 10 Downing Street. Nick, after much pressure, the Prime Minister has caved in and says he will accept more refugees into the country.
He has caved in to a certain degree, and he said that part of this is as a result of the images that he saw, as the rest of the world saw earlier in the week, of the young boy dead on the beach in Turkey. What he is saying now is that Britain will offer thousands of more places to Syrian refugees. This is what he said.
Now, Britain has a moral responsibility to help these refugees, as we've done throughout our history. We've already provided sanctuary to more than 5,000 Syrians in Britain. And earlier today in Lisbon, I announced we'd extend our approach and offer resettlement for thousands more of Syrian refugees currently in UN camps across the region.
But what he didn't say specifically were how many thousands, and he certainly didn't say tens of thousands of additional Syrian refugees will get asylum in Britain. But he's not only facing pressure at home here in Britain to take a more compassionate position over the migrants, particularly this week after those devastating images, but he's also facing pressure at home here in Britain to keep a tough line on the migrant issue, not to let too many people into Britain, and is also facing pressure from European leaders who feel that Britain isn't doing enough on the migrant crisis. And there he had quite a robust response as well, because he said that Britain is the only country around the world that spends 0.7% of its GDP on aid, that it's the second highest contributor directly to aid camps around Syria, $1.5 billion spent there. Lynda?
Clearly, he wanted to point out that much of the focus has to be on the source of the problem as well. Nick Robertson in London, thank you very much. Well, that does it for this edition of the International Desk. We'll be right back at the top of the hour. I'm Lynda Kinkade. Marketplace Africa is up next.